Soldiers of Reddit, what is something you wish you knew before joining the armed forces? 90% of soldiering is being cold, wet, exhausted, hungry, bored and pissed off. 5% is running around shooting things. The remaining 5% is cleaning all the stuff you used to shoot things with. At times all of that was my experience as well, except the being hungry part. That is one thing of many things I do have to give the army credit for. They made sure I was fed. I was blown away by how much food I got in the army and also how good the food was. I was expecting it to be terrible and it really was not. It is cafeteria style food and it has the sameness after a while if you have to eat in the DFAC too much. When your tent is a 45 minutes walk from the DFAC, the sameness makes missing the ride okay. Lol. Yeah, Marine Corps chow sucks compared to an army field DFAC every day of the week. Except maybe the Marine Corps birthday, where everyone gets steak and lobster. Cheap steak and lobster, but still better than normal chow hall food. Don't pick a job that seems like it would be cool. They are all shitty. Pick one that will get you some of training or certification you can use after you get out. Or just pick one that stays indoors working on computers. Material management in the Air Force sounds boring, right? 6 years later after I separated. Logistic coordinator for $1 billion aviation company sounds pretty nice. Served my country, got some skills, have a great career in something I like. Doesn't matter if my job while in the Air Force wasn't the stuff commercials were made of. Words. It's not science fiction. It's what we do every day. Something that happens once a year. Reddit Cake Day. Friend of mine just finished 20 years in the army in logistics. He is making bank now in contracting. First. Airborne infantry is a lot of physical work in shitty environments paired with nonsensical busy work with no payoff. Bad leaders will destroy your morale, but good leaders will shield you from them. Second. Get a job that translates into a real world career. Third. Realize that when you deploy, you will live through highest and lowest the human experience can offer. When you return, it will be utter disappointment and prepare yourself to endure that forever. Number 3 hits close to home. After deployment, life was just boring. Agreed. Especially after experiencing firefights and multiple near-death experiences. Makes my current desk job a breeze. Dude. You should write a book or something. You don't need to go at it alone. Do a Google search for Team Red, White and Blue in your local area. It is an organization devoted to helping connect vets through activities and social outings, and it is free. And trust me, you are not a psycho for missing the thrill of war. How badly being in the infantry would affect my back, shoulders and knees. I wish I had joined as a medic from the beginning instead of waiting until I had left and was a reservist to do it. Come for the skills. Stay for the 15 kg CFT. 25 kg for infantry. Both work smart or work hard, eh? Hope you're enjoying the medic side of it, mate. Loving it, mate. They do this really novel thing where they treat you like an adult. Bizarre but so endearing. I kinda get it. You have a constant stream of 18-year-olds to manage. When I worked at a warehouse we had the same issue and they treated us all like we had just been given a day pass from the local daycare. Being skilled labor, you have more to lose, so they trust you more because hopefully you have the good sense to understand consequences for your actions. Just curious, can a 29 years old become a medic with no previous medical training or armed forces history? How much I'd be sitting around with my thumb up my ass. Or how power mad an E7 could get. Like, man. Stop micromanaging. You've given us our tasks, let us fucking do them. Wow, the military sure sounds gay. Not if you say no homo or are wearing boot bands. Every other time, that's a solid yes. It's not queer if it's off the pier. Some say, he wears his boot bands to this day. Just in case. It's simultaneously the most homoerotic and homophobic organization there is. There's a relevant terminal Lance somewhere. Had an old buddy in the Marines. He said there was nothing more gay than 2 straight Marines. Laughed at the absurdity of that concept. If you are enlisted, just how much goddamn cleaning and yard work you would do came in handy though. When I got out I had me a sweet gig as a janitor. When I got out I told my husband that I would never rake again. A few years later he wants to plant some trees in our yard and I reminded him that I don't rake. Now every year he talks about raking the yard in the fall and I tell him to have fun. You're missing out. You should totally rake with me this fall. So much fun. When I was an 8 we used to laugh that we were the most in shape janitors on the planet. Also we used to joke that there must be some hidden army regulation that dictates that all army lawnmowers in a training environment must be small as hell and weight as much as possible. Can't forget that every buffer is messed up in some way. When I started my job I was amazed that buffers actually weren't meant to throw you across the room when you turned them on. Yes, buffers. Ha. Most in shape janitors on the planet. That's almost more funny than taking the mountain terrain police calling course. I kindly request a janitor calendar. Save for the future because all of it ends quicker than you think. Literally everyone I know that enlisted finished their time with zero money saved up. So many of them feel the need to blow every paycheck when they have basically zero expenses. Of the 3 Marines I know well enough for them to share their finances with me. 1/3 saved, bought stock, got a used car and paid it off, going to college. The downside is he refused to work while going to college, so he ended up draining most of his savings between the GI running out and landing a job. 2/3 went to college, blew everything he could, lucky enough to be smart enough to get a good job after the GI bill ran out. 3/3 spent it all, went back to living at home with not a penny to his name. So yeah, pretty shitty financial decisions all around. That was my thought looking at ROTC or odds after I graduated. That's not gonna last long most likely. I guess once you're an officer it can last a while if you're good, but most likely you're gonna work a lot harder at a shitty job when you get preferential hiring at just a normal federal government job. So no Camaro? Enlisted are normally terrible at this and always blame their low pay. Once you hit E5 and have a few deployments under your belt there's no reason why you should still be living paycheck to paycheck. At Air Force here 90% of the people you work with are super down to earth and chill. It just so happens that 9% of the remaining 10% is leadership that doesn't give a fuck about anything you do but results that make them look better. Mismanagement and hubris are a big part of supervision in my career field. The disconnect between junior enlisted and COS and COS is staggering and apparent. That's not where they are supposed to be. Chill out, it's not like it's Space Force. These people also have an open door policy and anytime you try to use it, you're destroyed for not having used your chain of command. If you tried your chain of command, you're still laughed out of the room because that's the way it's always been done. Recently discovered most commanders' open door policy is only there because it's mandated that they have one. Recruiters tell you that a military career in your job history shortlists you for being hired at any civilian job. Not true at all. At best it'll give you the appearance of being a team player, but that is almost never enough. You need actual skills they are looking for. Being able to pass inspection and firing a rifle does not mean you are qualified. Take the money you saved up from your time in or the GI Bill you are entitled to and use it to go to university. I used to hire for a small welding shop back in the 90s. I had a few vets coming and looking for a job. A few things I noticed: if you ask a vet to come for an interview at 10 AM he will show up at 9:30. And if you give him a form to fill out he never has to ask for a pen, in contrast to almost every other person I ever interviewed. Punctuality, preparedness and tidiness are never lacking with a vet, but almost to a degree that is detrimental. Our shop was pretty small, about a dozen people, and without the rigid structure that you find in a big business. There were a lot of times where you would have to jump on a task that might have been outside your area of expertise, because at that size there might not be full-time work for every type of task. I hired 2 vets and neither of them lasted long. One guy was a welder and he just wanted to stay at his station and TIG weld, and didn't like that one. It wasn't his station and other fabricators might have to use his machine and table. And 2, sometimes even our welders would have to do an install or drive a truck. He left for a job with a military contractor. Good guy. Our setup wasn't for him and he found a better place for himself welding submarine parts. The other guy had no real skills, which was okay, because what we did was kind of specialized, high-end ornamental and architectural metal, and we trained a lot of our best guys from scratch. What he couldn't deal with was the lack of oversight. Like, if you gave him a task, no matter how tedious, he would get it done with no complaints. But he would never see what needed to be done next and took no initiative. Unless you gave him a task with quantifiable results, nothing would get done. If he felt he wasn't being specifically tasked with something, he would happily just do nothing, and then be surprised when someone called him on it. There was also a weird hierarchical thing with him where he was obsequious with the boss, who was a pretty macho guy, borderline insubordinate with me. It reminded me of the stereotype of how a second lieutenant is regarded, and always patrolling this fictitious pecking order among all the other workers, that seemed at least in part to be along race lines. He was a terrible presence in the shop, and when we had to lay off a few people during a downturn, it was a relief to see him go. This is my TIG. There are many like it, but this one is mine. My TIG is my best friend. It is my life. I must master it as I must master my life. Without me, my TIG is useless. Without my TIG, I am useless. I must weld my TIG true. I must weld straighter than my coworker who is trying to use my TIG.